Well, it's been a while since we've reviewed your hot takes with the game being almost a year old before a major update. Let's talk about them. I'm going to cover them here today. You can follow me on this hellish platform if you want to submit them next time, and let's get started. Prenville says, Splatoon should have more accessibility for the disabled, even if it means stuff like aim assist. Player accessibility should matter more than competitive viability. Aim assist goes beyond competitive viability. There's differences between aim assist and the game just aiming for you, and that's a very complicated debate. Having some nature of aim assist to help have your crosshair in the right location for sticks is good. More settings like having faster sends, because sticks is pretty low even on the highest sends, or other options like an actual better colorblind mode than just color lock would be awesome. I think adding more accessibility options is always a good thing. I think it would have been cool if they focused more on the apocalypse side in the story mode. In the story mode, it's a pretty lukewarm take. In general, I think it could have been used more. I was a bit worried about the opposite problem because the first few trailers really didn't show much of stuff that wasn't, kind of like desert, wasteland, apocalypse type thing. But in general, most of the maps and stuff haven't really shared the theming very well. I just don't think many of them use the setting that well, and it would be cool to see just some more interesting layouts. I've had ideas for stuff like a nighttime city or a volcano, but I'm not the best at making more chaotic settings, so let me know what ideas you guys want to see for maps like that. Lucifer says that X Battle and Series should be merged into one. I honestly agree with this. I get the idea of making X rank separate. There is rank decay in series that you don't want to affect X rank, and in general it can make X rank more competitive, but honestly I think the problem is that open is already kind of your unranked mode, and if you want to just chill, you can play that rotation. The only real positive of having series separate is you have an extra rotation you can pick between. But the issue there is more the limited, terrible rotation system in the first place. This would also allow you to have rank X be locked behind something like S+10, which I think would be a bit more fair, like it was in Splatoon 2. And it would make it so that X rank players don't get rank decayed back if they don't play a bunch of Anarchy. You could have something like if your X power is below 2000, you reset back to S+0 and have to get back to S+10 to get it back, and anything above that would just stay in X. Hope says, Sturgeon TC shouldn't be played in tournament. Tower as a mode is prone to snowballing, but Sturgeon is especially egregious. You get high ground over the defensive positions the enemy team has to utilize to hold the checkpoints after winning one fight in mid. Now listen, that is a really big problem, and normally if we had actual maps, this would make me agree. The downside isn't really that this statement is wrong, it's that other tower maps are so much worse layout-wise that this isn't as bad. Like, I can't put 5 maps in a map list right now and have TC Sturgeon not be one of them without putting something in the map list that is lower quality. Sturgeon as a map is just so much better than most of the Splatoon 3 ones we have, with a bit of open paths, unique gimmick, and overall solid layout. Not an amazing stage by any means, but much better than what we have right now, even if it doesn't fit the mode too well. Grizzco says, Salmon Run is becoming quite stale. Nothing significant has changed or been added since release. Big Run happens infrequently, Undertow was not great, and Extra Work is an uninspired overfishing competition. I do think Salmon Run has definitely become the most stale. It gets a little bit of stuff, like the patch for the new mode definitely made me like it a lot more, just because the quality of rotations was really up there, but there's not too many maps. There have been no new night waves, and honestly, some of the new night waves haven't aged so well. Looking at you, Tornado, which has probably been the most boring wave I've ever seen in Splatfest at this point. And just in general, Salmon Run went from a mode I like to something I still like, but feel like I've kind of explored all the way. I'm not super competitive in Salmon Run. I kind of just play it to have fun, and I need a few new things at this point, honestly. Even something like Extra Work being more common would be nice, but some new boss salmonids or night waves would really add to the mode to me. Hopefully we see something in the next update. Fizzle says, Crab Tank doesn't need any nerfs right now. Yes, we absolutely despised it for half a year, but we moved on to a more varied meta. It's an all-rounder that gives fun options. Splash should still be 210. I wasn't sure if this was a hot take, but apparently there are a good bit of people who think that Splash and Crab are still really overtuned. They honestly haven't been for the past few months. Inkjet being put into the meta served as a nice counter to it, and the M-lag nerfs have only become more and more prominent as other buff specials have more ways of counterplaying it. And now with more new options in the meta, including potentially blasters or stuff like Tacticooler, which is mitigating respawns and working better now that you can push into the crab with other specials, I think it's more than fair at this point. And yeah, Splash should be 210. Ruby says the mammalian aspect of Return of the Mammalians feels like it was thrown in last minute. They didn't really incorporate the mammal theming at all until Grizz was revealed. The fuzz serves no purpose but to be a roadblock for you to clear, and if it was enemy ink, nothing would change. I didn't didn't really think about this too much, but yeah, it's kind of true. I think the devs wanted to have Mr. Grizz be the only remaining mammal, you know, so his story would work. But that also kind of put them into how do we incorporate the theme, and it just turned into having a bunch of reskinned Octarians and the fuzzy ink. The fuzz is still a cool mechanic, but it didn't need to be mammalian tied, and yeah, I do wish there was a bit more tied into that theming. The more I think about Return of the Mammalians, while I still think it's a good single-player campaign, it's clear that there's a lot of missed potential in the story mode, and this is just one of them. And this, as well as the new Agent 3 being a scavenger and not being characterized enough, are probably the biggest missed opportunities I've heard of so far. Gus said, Splatoon 3 has improved the franchise, but it relies heavily on nostalgia, while also not incorporating big, small things the game had going well. Unstable networks, X-rank player base, yeah, because we've made it its own queue and split it into 2 regions, no shifty stations, Tricolor has been an okay substitute, but yeah, I can see why people miss these. Only one hero weapon in story mode? Okay, I can see people missing the hero mode weapons, but they have to have better conditions to unlock them. And no new mode. I don't know why you would want to buff Tri-Stringer's range of all things. Like, that weapon could get better, but that's a weird problem to adjust. I think a new mode is the big one here. We've definitely split player-based queues a bit too much to hurt matchmaking time, but I don't think that's as big an issue, and Tricolor is still a nice substitute. The lack of new ranked mode is really the big thing for me, and what I want to see. Or at least something like a brand new Salmon Run mode. Just something new to give a lot of the things you're doing a bit more ways you can experience the game. Glitch Cactus says that dualies deserve some type of buff or great kit to be pushed into the meta. We've gotten little attention, and I'd like to see a meta where at least one dualie is ran per comp. I mean, I don't think it should be forced, and dualies are in a solid spot overall right now, but I do agree. For their difficulty, they don't give quite enough reward, and we haven't seen too many of them. I think something like the End Parry kit, especially if it gets like curling inkjet again, would be a definite candidate. But man, it is a crime that Tetras with Zipcaster got stuck with Sprinkler. Tetras have been struggling a bit more since they don't have a strong kit in a meta with Cooler where everything else can be fast. And that kit would have been so perfect if it had like any other sub. Some smaller buff to Dualie Squelchers, a new kit to Dapple, and something for Gluga would also be nice. Yaga says we don't need a new Splatoon game, at least not for a very long time. Splatoon 3's foundation is strong, so if they keep updating and releasing new content, I would be more than happy with it. As long as it's on whatever new Switch is gonna happen, I would agree, but that means they would have to keep adding content to the game for a while, which is something I think they could very easily do. They could keep adding a ton of new kits and weapons for the longest time. We could easily have 3rd, 4th, or even 5th kits. And stuff like newer stages, potential modes, and just in general, I think you could continue to add content to this game for a long time, but I don't think Nintendo will do that. I think 2 to 3 years tends to be where DLC cuts off for pretty much any game they have. And with few exceptions like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Pass, have we ever seen DLC this late into a game. So as much as I would like it to happen, and agree, I don't think we're gonna see it. Salad says most shooters should never be top tiers. It's okay for them to get less value up the ranks, and they should be toned back. I get the idea of why people want to see this, as shooters are some of the best main weapon classes in the game, but the thing to keep in mind is a lot of shooters are very good for filling out team comps and allowing other weapons to be used, such as the vanilla splatter shot right now or the Splasher-matic. There's exceptions for this, obviously. Stuff like 52 Gal is incredibly selfish, but I'd say most shooters do serve a healthy role in diversifying other weapons that can be played. The issue is more other weapons not being tuned properly than shooters being overtuned. Delta Blur says casual Splatoon is a much worse experience than competitive Splatoon 3, where many casual players might not have other players to play with in private battles or Anarchy Open. The maps feel bad and terrible for the experience, and there are some weapons that are more fun. The boring stage design not being able to add options feels worse than Splatoon 2, even if Splatoon 2 had special spam meta. At the very least was bearable in solo since people had varied weapons. I can see why people would find Splatoon 3 casually a bit more boring right now, especially since a lot of what's being praised right now about the game is the meta and the diversity of that, which mostly affects higher levels of play. Casual play has definitely needed something new and exciting, and what we got was challenges, which, yeah, covered in its own video. Anyway, that's all the hot takes. Thanks for watching.